There's an interesting section in this Triggernometry interview where Tommy starts breaking down some of the problems with Muhammad and the Quran that should concern Westerners more than they seem to.
Wait, there's problems with Muhammad? I thought he was perfect.
Isn't it weird? And Tommy didn't even bring up Al-Zut.
Oh, sad.
It's Tommy's in solitaire, and Muslims think, oh, we will show him that Islam is the truth, and Tommy will come out and convert to Islam when he sees the powerful evidence for the Quran. All he needs to do is read it. He comes out wrecking Islam. That's awesome.
Convert me. So I take the Quran. I think, right, I've got a lot of time on my hands here. Let's have a look at this book. Right? Now, I don't know how many people know this, but the Quran is not in chronological order.
That's
I didn't
true.
know this. So one thing Muhammad says one day is next to something he says 20 years later. So for you to try and, any of us to try and make sense, it's like what the Christians used to do. They wanted everyone illiterate so they could control the population. Yeah? The Quran is like an encrypted war manual that you can't make sense of. Yeah?
That is a good description. What?
He says Christians wanted the population illiterate. No.
He says there was a time when they wanted a population of illiterate Christians so they could control them.
Okay. I thought he said Christians wanted an illiterate population, which is...
He did. He said Christians wanted an illiterate population to control them.
I like to know who he's referring to, because like, if you read early church fathers, they constantly encouraged not only reading of the scriptures, but also even pagan philosophy and pagan stories, like
hang on.
Chrysostom, Augustine. So I don't know what he's talking about there.
And hang on. Inspiring philosophy, if this is correct, is it true that wherever Christianity spread, literacy went through the roof?
Oi! It's true, mate.
But the point Tommy's making here about Islam, it's very interesting. He said the Quran is like an encrypted war manual. Since it's out of order and doesn't tell you what's abrogating what and so on, it's a war manual. It's a manual for subjugating the world, but it's all out of order and you can't tell what's what, and you need all these scholars and stuff to try and figure things out for you, and so you can't understand it and you don't know what it's if you're not knowledgeable about it, you don't know how it's trying to train people to destroy you. Interesting.
And it's important that you can make sense of it, because abrogation in Islam means whatever Muhammad says late in his life supersedes what he says earlier. So if there's two contradictory verses, if he says love the Jews and then later he says kill the Jews, then which one did he say later? Yeah? This one matters. This prohibits this one. So they give me the Quran. And then I thought, right, let me make a few points here. Do not be friends with Christians or Jews. And I challenge anyone to do this. Pick up a Quran and go through and make reference to the verses that tell you not to be friends with Christians or Jews. And I started writing these verses and I had pages of them. And I was like, it was like a jigsaw just fell into place. Everything I've seen growing up, the Muslim playground, the Muslim dinner tool, the friends who side with them, well, they're taught from a little age. Supremacy, they're taught not to be friends with us. They can't be friends with us. 70% of this book talks about us. How they need...
But why are you guys talking about Muhammad? 70% of the book talks about us. Hey,
that's very true what he's saying. I mean, like you go through the Quran, it's like it gives Muslims a superiority complex. It says like they are the best that Allah has ever raised up. The Jews and Christians are the worst of people. Surah 3:7 says if you're rejecting the Quran, you're somebody who's without reason. It says not to take us as friends. I mean, like, how do you not come away as a Muslim without a superiority complex reading this book? Like, it's the exact opposite of the Christian scriptures, which says, like, Jesus came to heal the sick. He did not come to the morally righteous. He came because he's a spiritual doctor here to call sinners. Paul says he is the chief of sinners. I mean, like, it's the exact opposite of what you get in the Christian scriptures, which says we're sinners, we need grace, we're not good people, this is why Jesus came to die for us. Which one is going to actually create humility and which one is going to create a superiority complex? It's pretty damn obvious.
Treat us. So as I'm reading it, I started making sense of it, and that was and I didn't stop after that, if I'm honest. I didn't stop learning, and then when I got out of jail, I thought, right, many people watching this probably just think Jesus is like Muhammad. Muhammad is like Jesus. Two prophets, two alleged prophets. Right. they're nothing like each other. Because I took the biography of Muhammad by Ibn Ishaq. So I like to go to the sources, the most recognized and renowned sources in the Islamic world. So again, not Tommy Robinson's opinion. This is not my story. This is the Islamic scholars of history, the best ones there are, of their life of Muhammad. So I started reading the life of Muhammad. And I read it. The Jewish tribe surrender. And this is why it's important, so people understand how important scripture is. Do you remember the Peshawar school attacks?
I don't know.
In Pakistan. So the Taliban, or Al-Qaeda, one of the two, they attacked a school and there was outrage about it. But what they did when they attacked schools, they pulled the pants down of all the kids. Mm-hmm. And anyone who started puberty was killed and beheaded. And anyone who hadn't was sacrificed as war booty, yeah? Well, that's exactly what Muhammad did. This is why the scripture is important.
Uh-huh.
So the Jewish tribe...
Gosh, this is actually very smart, guys. So
good.
There's the stuff that happened in his life and he didn't understand. Hey, what's going on? Is this just a cultural thing? Is this just like a Pakistani thing? What's going on? Why are these guys behaving differently? Why are they acting like this and so on? Then he gets the Quran and, all of a sudden I understand this stuff. I understand why they act like this. I understand what their religion has done to them. But then he starts making sense of other things that happen, right? Like, hey, because now he's talking about going through Ibn Ishaq, biography of Muhammad, our earliest biography of Muhammad. He's saying, hey, there's an attack and they take over the school and they make everyone drop their pants and they're checking for your pubic hair. And if you've gone through puberty, then they kill you. And if not, then they do something else with you. And he's pointing out it's exactly what Muhammad did. Exactly what Muhammad did.
Surrender. Now, when they surrender, Muhammad tortures Kanana. He's the leader of the Jewish tribe, setting fire to his stomach to rob his gold. What sort of prophet is this? I'm thinking, what sort of man is this? Jesus says, turn the other cheek. Muhammad's torturing and burning people and robbing them. Yeah. So
for money. The guy's crime was he knew where some money was hidden and he didn't want to tell them. And so Muhammad, this is Kanana, this is in Ibn Ishaq, but Muhammad has one of his followers light a fire on this dude's chest to torture him. Interesting. And then Muhammad, and then after killing him, Muhammad bangs the dude's wife, Sophia.
Robbing them, and then after robbing them, he takes that night, Sophia. So any Muslims, and when I had this conversation with Muslims, they don't even know about this. Half of them. Yeah? I said, he took the man's wife that night and married her. Now, here's the two different worldviews. I see that as raping the man's wife that night. Other Muslims have said, well, no, he saved her from a life of slavery, from all the other men raping her. Because he took her. He was actually really good because he saved her. It's like, what? But anyway, he beheads these people, he does this, and I started going through his life. And he walks past another Muslim at another point, and this is all in scripture, and he says, have you derobed her? He's on about another slave. I said, no, give her here. So then I started understanding, and I started finding verses in here, there's 4, that say, outside of the 4 wives, what Muhammad tells you is you can take non-Muslim women as sexual slaves, and you'll blame, one of the verses says you're actually blameless.
Yep.
So I think,
straight out of the Quran.
Rotherham, Telford, all these towns and cities, are they taking non-Muslim women as sexual slaves? Now, this is not confusing. Boko Haram's leader, when they took the girls in Nigeria, come out and said, Muhammad has commanded us to do this. Well, he has. Read the scripture. Yeah? Al-Qaeda, ISIS, what did they do to the Yazidi? This is not made up. There's not 30, 40 different terrorist groups all singing off the same hymn sheet here. Yeah, this is a problem. And again, it's great that the majority of Muslims don't read this and take it literally. That's great. Mm-hmm. But the problem's coming from this. And I tried to have this conversation with Piers Morgan. We'll get onto him. I tried to have this conversation. So what I've done, so as I learned more, I then learned about Islam, I learned about Muhammad. I think we need to understand who Muhammad was. Yeah? Mm-hmm. If we've got 4 million British Muslims now who think Muhammad was perfect, and Muhammad married a 6-year-old girl when she was 9, we're going to have a problem.
You know what that is? That is basic common sense. If you've got 4 million people who think this guy's an ideal pattern of conduct, and what did this guy do? Well, he would gladly take women and girls as captives, sex slaves, all sorts of things. And he thinks even if you're 9, you're fair game for sex. Probably going to run into some problems here, especially if you view the non-Muslims as complete garbage that you can do whatever you want with.
If Muhammad beheaded and took sexual slaves, we're going to have a problem. If Muhammad taught all this, in the Quran, 7% of Mein Kampf is Jew hatred. 7%. 11% of that book. Mein Kampf is banned. This isn't banned. This is taught across the whole country. Now, you're not even allowed to have this conversation. And the Labour
you are.
Yeah.
We're having this conversation.
We're having it, but Labour government want to bring in Islamophobia laws that would prevent us even having this conversation.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you say you allowed it. We've come a long way.
You are now.
Yeah.
This is fair. Look, this is why I wanted to ask you about this, Tommy, because I don't know exactly what I think about it. I just want to hear your opinion on this for a very long time. And I think you have been, I was going to say demonized, and I think it's probably the correct term. You have been demonized for talking about it. But I also think as the nature of what has been happening in this country is coming out, that I know, just speaking to lots of people, these are people who are not going to be on the streets in a riot. These are people who are sitting in TV studios and they're doing, comedy, and they're doing journalism, and they're doing politics, and none of them will ever say anything publicly. But there are a lot of people now who are going, you know what, Tommy's been saying a lot of things that have been proven correct. So that's just where we're at. People can pretend that's not happening. That is what's happening.
Oh,
right?
that's happening.
But what I'm trying to understand is what it is that you're saying, because one of the things that I don't understand, genuinely don't understand, is where we go from here, right? What is it that you think we ought to do? Because what you're saying, correct me if any of this is not your view, right? What you're really saying is Islamic doctrine is divisive and hateful towards non-Muslims, and it is about domination, right?
And it's incompatible with Western freedom and democracy.
And it's incompatible with Western freedom and democracy, which is where I think a lot of people's concern with that message is, for the simple reason of like, well, what do we do?
That's the point.
Is that a fair question?
If we accept this, if you accept we're right, what the hell are you going to do?
Right.
Because you've got 4 million Muslims here.
Yes.
You guys getting this? Yep.
And not just got 4 million Muslims, but you've got Saudi and Qatar own half the capital city. The money is embedded in the nation. Qatar has spent £750 million. Qatar that houses Hamas. Qatar have spent £750 million radicalising Muslims across Europe. They've messed up the whole of France.
To be fair, Tommy, Qatar and Saudi are two very different states.
They are, because Saudi under the new king are actually coming quite progressive and actually trying to deal with some of these
and the UAE, right?
And the UAE.
So this is the UAE.
This is another part of the discussion, which is really, I think, really important. And you keep saying that, and I think it's important to emphasize. I've come back from Uzbekistan a couple of months ago, and I grew up in Uzbekistan, Soviet Muslim country, right?
He actually made, if I recall correctly, I think it was him, he actually made an interesting video on how Uzbekistan just doesn't have a lot of the same radical tendencies, and they still dress according to their like pre-Islamic culture and stuff like that. And he's trying to understand why, but it's something like they're just still proud of their culture, and they don't let Islam just take it over and dominate it and so on. And so, but what?
I looked into that a while ago because there's a lot of among Turks and in Turkey and all that. There's a lot of attempts to make connections with those Central Asian cultures, those Turkic cultures, which is Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan and all the others. And what they all have in common is that they were all at some point ruled by the Soviet Union and were brutally, basically forcefully secularized and atheistified. But the other thing is also that, so aside from the whole Soviet impact and turning away from religion, turning away from Islam specifically, those cultures themselves always had, and nowadays still have, a rejection of communism, but also a rejection of being taken over by Islam. It's just basically a kind of a desire to be traditional and to take care of their own traditions. But the thing is, they're all a little bit nutty. They're all a little bit crazy, those countries.
Well, so are you.
They're all a little bit crazy. They do these weird things of like, everyone shall dress like this and nothing else. Women should have these hairstyles. And Turkmenistan is an extreme form of that. It has these things like, there is a list of allowed hairstyles. You can't have other hairstyles except those. Or a list of dresses that women are allowed to wear, and you can't wear anything else. So they banned things like Islamic wear, but they replace it with this hyper traditionalist, culturalist, traditionalist stuff. It's a very strange culture. I don't know.
They don't have grooming gangs. They don't have extremists. The extremists they have all leave because they make life intolerable for them, right? UAE, Saudi Arabia, a lot of Muslim countries are actually much better at dealing with Islamic extremism than we are, right?
Yeah, there's a reason for that as well. There's a reason for that. So UAE, Saudi, they ban all these extremist groups. Muslim Brotherhood not allowed to operate. We actually give home to these groups because it supported British foreign policy. With the war in Afghanistan, with the Soviet, we wanted a Mujahideen. Yeah. We funded the Mujahideen.
The Americans did.
The Americans and us. Yeah. We gave home to their leaders in Europe. We allowed them to grow, foster, and all of a sudden, Boris Johnson, put it on here. This is Boris Johnson. Remember this is Boris Johnson before 7/7. Yeah. Remember what it says in the Holy Qur'an. Slay the unbelievers wherever you can find them. We will perform jihad against the kuffar, the unbelievers. That was in Boris Johnson's book, 72 Virgins. So he knows what Islam is. Right. But then when he comes in power, he totally pretends he doesn't.
Hey, that's interesting. So he's pointing out this guy knows his stuff. Boris Johnson, he knew his stuff. He knew what Islam teaches. And he gets into power and he just, no, Islam's great and wonderful. Wow.
So there's many that understand it. Boris Johnson's one of them. Yeah, but he's a coward. And he took a different line. So when we say what are we going to do, and most of these countries come down hard, but we didn't. We gave home. The Muslim Brotherhood have got offices in our capital cities. It's like they wouldn't be allowed to operate in the UAE or Saudi Arabia.
No.
Now Saudi Arabia understand that you can't give any homage to Hezbollah, Hamas, these terrorist groups, and that look at what's happened in Iran. But I think most people in our country need to understand how quickly a country can change. Yep. Look what happened to Iran. Under the Ayatollah. Look at the Islamic Revolution. They went from freedom-loving liberal
women walking around miniskirts
to and I remember there's videos of them laughing in halls when they say women will have to wear a hijab. Yeah, well, now you get killed if you don't. Mm-hmm. Yeah?
You hear that? You had the guys. It's actually important to note what happened with the Iranian Revolution. Iran had a king for basically 2,700 years straight. And then you had the mullahs saying, no, we should have Islamic law. And you had the leftists who wanted communism or socialism or something like that. What happened? They all agreed on something. The leftists, the communists, the socialists, they agreed with the Muslims on something. They agreed that we need to get rid of the king. And so they aligned them. They became allies and got rid of the Shah. Him and his family had to leave, and then the Muslims killed the leftists. And Tommy's just pointing out there, you had there are videos from that time when people are saying, hey, do you understand if these mullahs take over, they're going to make you wear the hijab. They're going to do, these idiots, they're so stupid. They think these guys are going to impose Islamic law on us. Basically exactly what people are saying now if you tell them what Islam wants to do.
So the question always is,
what do we do?
What do we do? Because as you say, there are lots of Muslims in this country who are great. Like like the stereotypical grooming gang perpetrator is like a taxi driver, right? I've said this before. The taxi driver that drives my wife and son around when they need to go somewhere is an Afghan man. I would trust no one more than him to take care of my wife and son because they're really good people, middle-class family, wonderful people, right? So there are millions of Muslims in this country actually who are not in any way a threat or a problem, right? Is that fair?
That's fair, but there's millions that are. Here's the problem.
I don't know. Well, you think there's millions of
23% want Sharia law in this country. It's well over 1 million that are a problem. They need to leave.
Okay.
I would say how much of this is culture? Like we know, for instance, with the grooming gangs, they come...
What?
I would say you could, for example, make a survey and ask people if they believe that Islam should rule in the end, and if they believe in Sharia, and everyone who responds with yes or I don't know should be deported immediately.
Majority of them come from a very specific region in Pakistan, and Kashmir. So how much of that is a cultural issue, and how much of that is Islam? Because we also need to separate that.
Well, there's lots of Sikhs in this country who come from Kashmir. Mm. They're not raping kids.
But there's also Omanis and Saudis in this country who are not raping kids.
No,
either.
they're not. But if you look at the gangs, and I've done the demographics of the gangs, Somali, Afghani, Iraqi, yes, the vast majority are Pakistani. Yeah, the vast majority, because the vast majority of Muslims in the UK are Pakistani. Mm. That's it. Now, if we look at, it's Moroccans who are doing it in Holland. There was a film called Loverboy created in 2007, and our pathetic country didn't allow it to be played in our schools. They clamped down because it was racist, yeah? Now, that film was an educational film to be played to children to educate them on the Loverboy techniques. grooming, right? 2007, how many kids could have been saved? But because of racism, and if we just rewind a little bit just to make...
He made an important point that if you go to different parts of the world, it's actually different groups. And if you look at Pakistanis are, I'd have to look at the numbers, but I think they're the biggest Muslim group. And so they're the ones doing most of the grooming gang. Why? They're kind of dominant in a bunch of these areas. But you can go to different countries and you find Muslims from different parts of the world are the ones that are primarily responsible for the grooming and so on. So seems to be something that connects these different groups, even from completely different backgrounds. I wonder what it could be.
What could it be?